The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the next huge trial here on Court TV, the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. A case that started with a manhunt and is now a death penalty trial. Here's the story. In the dead of night on November 13th, 2022, a brutal horror unfolded in a quiet college town. 4 University of Idaho students, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, were savagely stabbed to death in their off-campus home, their lives stolen in the stillness of early morning. The scene was a nightmare. Untouched valuables, no signs of forced entry, and 2 surviving roommates asleep just rooms away. Panic rippled across Moscow, Idaho, as fear took hold and answers remained elusive. For weeks, grief-stricken families and a shaken campus waited, desperate for justice. Then, a stunning arrest. A criminology PhD student studying just miles away was taken into custody. DNA from a knife sheath, cell phone data, and eerie surveillance footage allegedly tied him to the scene. The community, once wrapped in innocence, now watches as the trial approaches, a chilling confrontation between law and depravity. The victims' names are etched in memory, their voices silenced, but their story far from over. As we get ready for this trial later this summer, this is going to be a difficult one on many different levels, but it really begins with the loss. 4 young people gone. 4 innocent, good people murdered. And it was a brutal crime scene. And there's surviving roommates who are going to testify. This is going to be so heartbreaking on so many different levels. There's another part of this case, though, that is going to happen. Because of the rules in Idaho, we know very little about what happened that night. As we get closer to trial, we're getting more and more pieces. But once that trial begins, every day of testimony, we're going to learn something new about the investigation, something new about the crime, and something new about the evidence. So let's start tonight and go back to the crime itself. What happened to these 4 young people? Take a listen.
On the morning of November 13th, at 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed to the Whitcomb Dispatch Center reporting an unconscious person. The call originated from inside the residence and was made from the phone of one of the surviving roommates. Moscow Police Department officers responded and located 4 victims, 2 on the 2nd floor and 2 on the 3rd floor. The Latah County coroners conducted autopsies, and detectives have been provided with the results of those autopsies. We know that the autopsies confirmed the identity of the 4 victims, determined the cause and manner of death as homicide by stabbing, and determined that it was likely all 4 victims who were asleep during the attack. Some of the victims had defensive wounds, and each victim was stabbed multiple times.
Officers discovered the bodies of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonzalez inside the residence on King Road. The 4 were stabbed with a knife, but no weapon has been located at this time.
Chief, have you identified a motive?
That is part of the investigation, and that will come out as we continue the investigation. But what we still ask is for people to continually send us things in the tip line. We are still looking for more information. We're still trying to build that picture, just like we have stated all along. We're putting all the pieces together, and that will help.
This investigation is not cold. We get tips every day that are viable. Every single day, we get a good amount of viable tips. And those tips help us do everything from clear people who maybe there was some speculation about, to further some of the theories that we're working on. Eventually, we're going to narrow in on exactly what happened and who did it.
Now they believe they know who did it. They've charged him with the 4 murders in this case. Now, they also believe this is what the weapon is that I'm holding in my hand. This is the same exact weapon that's been described. And the reason they believe they know what it is that the sheath that is holding this knife, this K-bar knife, was found at the scene. And that is the crucial piece of evidence, the DNA that they say they found on the snap here. But as I hold this, I don't even want to unbutton this and look at the knife. I could feel how heavy it is. But just to know that someone used something just like this to take those 4 lives in such a brutal, brutal way with a weapon like this. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation tonight. And it's about the knife. Where's the murder weapon? They don't have the murder weapon. You know the defense is going to make that a big part of their case. Where could it be? Here to help answer this question, former homicide detective Chris McDonough. He's also the host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough, and retired FBI agent Stuart Fillmore. You can find him on all platforms as Texas Crime Travelers. Thank you both for being here. This is not an easy question, right? Chris, what are your thoughts about where this weapon could be?
Well, Vinny, I think the first thing that we need to consider is, how important that weapon was to the offender. And that will help us determine whether or not the offender would have discarded it after the crime. And in this particular case, we have evidence, obviously, that he had gone back into Amazon and actually put a duplicate knife into, the cart, but he didn't make the purchase. So that may give us a little insight into what he was thinking post-homicide. So he could have tossed it out, kind of like, Bundy did back in the day, because we have evidence that he was cosplaying Bundy with photographs, obviously, on his phone. But it's probably alongside of a rotor in the Snake River.
The Snake River, that would be a tough one to recover from. Stuart Fillmore, what are your thoughts about, it seemed that if you believe the prosecution's version and you believe this is the suspect, there was some level of planning in all of this. And I guess part of the plan has to be, what do you do with the clothing? What do you do with some of the evidence afterwards? But specifically, the alleged murder weapon in all of this. What are your thoughts? And how much time would you invest in a case like this in trying to find it?
At this point in the case, it's really all you're lacking. Well, you don't have motive, but you don't have to have motive. The murder weapon, you have the sheath and then he's the Amazon attempted purchase. That's pretty compelling stuff there. This would absolutely put this over the top if you could recover this weapon.
When we talk about that area of the country, Chris, it's very rural. Parts of it are. We've had Cody Thomas drive those roads. We're going to talk to him a little bit later in the program about that. But it just seems like there's a lot of places that it could disappear. But it also seems that everyone out there, if they came across a knife, would likely call police because this is such a high-profile case.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And because it is, so damning, that type of evidence, I think the citizens would 100% turn it in. And which leads us to this other thought process. Does he have this, hidden someplace? Did he take it back to Pennsylvania? or did he discard it? I agree with Stuart 1,000%. It's good if you had that piece of evidence, then it's a slam dunk at that point.
You know what's interesting, Chris? You just raised something I didn't even think of, Stuart. The fact that he's from Pennsylvania, drove across the country to go back home. That's ultimately where he got arrested. So the search for this murder weapon could not only be, in the places he may have gone afterwards, but it could be anywhere from Pullman, Washington to Pennsylvania.
Absolutely, but I think maybe we might look a little closer. For whatever reason, he was prone to getting stopped by the cops. And if he planned this out and he's trying to be this, he's trying to maybe recreate some of Ted Bundy's successes or not successes, that's the wrong term, but he's basically trying to recreate being Ted Bundy. And he knows that he gets stopped all the time, especially at 4 o'clock in the morning. A car's going to stand out in a small town like that. You have a greater chance of getting stopped. I think there's a good chance he wanted to get rid of that as quickly as possible, and that was probably part of his plan. We know that the phone was off. The phone goes on at 4:48. He left the Kings Road house at 4:20. So there's 28 minutes unaccounted for. And when that first cell tower picks him up at 4:48, he's just south of the Blaine, Idaho tower. So that tells me he's probably on 95 somewhere. And the rest of the times that he hits the cell towers and the videos, it pretty much is consistent that he drove south on 95 and came back to Pullman on 195. So it's that 28 minutes after the 4:20 time when possibly he could have dumped the knife somewhere, maybe even buried it, and then you have to also consider the next day he drives all the way down to Clarkston, Washington, and on the way down there he goes by that same intersection of 95 and 195, which, by the way, there's an overpass there that looks over, I think it's called the Lewiston Overpass, and this guy had studied previous crimes. In the Manson killings, the killers threw their weapons over a cliff, on a roadside cliff. Maybe he's studied how killers have gotten away and done their cases. Maybe he's trying to recreate a little bit of the Manson thing and threw it off that cliff in Lewiston.
Yeah, it's the defense will make a big deal that they don't have the murder weapon and perhaps build the defense from there outwards. Prosecutors don't have it, but as you mentioned, they do have the knife sheath, and they say they've got his DNA on the snap, which is very compelling evidence. Great news. Our guests are going to stay with us. When we come back, what information could the out-of-state witnesses provide?
Nobody understands exactly why, but he was stalking them. He was hunting them.
The Court TV podcast will return.
You read the affidavit and you just find out that nobody understands exactly why, but he was stalking them. He was hunting them. He was just a person looking for an opportunity, and it just happened to be in that house.
Kelly's father, Steve Gonsalves, what a pillar of strength he has been throughout this. Really an amazing man. And I think it's an amazing father. That's what we're seeing play out. And he has really been the face of the victims throughout all of this. Pretty amazing. There's been a development in this case that I want to talk about tonight. There's some hearings that are coming up, some important hearings regarding some potential witnesses in the case. Take a look. We've learned the names of 7 potential prosecution witnesses in the trial, but they're not out in Idaho. They're in Pennsylvania, where the suspect is from. There's going to be at least 2 hearings to decide whether or not they're going to need to travel from Pennsylvania to Idaho to testify. And that first hearing is set for Monday, June 30th. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. What information could the out-of-state witnesses provide in this trial? Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas to get some more information here. Cody, I know you've been looking at this. What do we know about these potential witnesses?
Well, Vinny, 7 witnesses out of state, all from Kohberger's past in some way, shape, form, or fashion, supposed to be attending this hearing on June 30th. So we'll start with the first one, and probably one of the more important guys. His name is William Searfoss. He's a corrections officer at the Monroe County Jail where Kohberger was held after his arrest at his family's home in eastern Pennsylvania in December of 2022. Now, this was before his extradition to Idaho. Now, reports have stated that Kohberger was on suicide watch while held at that jail, but aside from that, police say his stay was relatively uneventful as he was held in isolation. Then, Vinny, we move on to Jesse Harris. Harris owns a boxing gym in Pennsylvania where Kohberger would train some years ago. Moving along to Ann Parham. She's a former high school academic advisor to Kohberger. Then we get to Anthony Sama. Now, reports have shown that a Facebook profile under the same name belonged to a graduate of the Monroe Career and Technical Institute. Now, Kohberger also attended that school for a youth law enforcement program, but administrators reportedly kicked him out after complaints from female classmates. The last 3, Vinny, we have Ralph Vecchio, worked at an auto shop that Kohberger frequently went to back home in Pennsylvania. Then we have Brandon Andriola. Now, he's replacing a woman named Michelle Bolger, one of Kohberger's former professors at DeSales University, who was initially scheduled to be included as a prosecution witness, but there are no immediate links between Andriola and DeSales, and his relationship to Kohberger is unclear. And lastly, Vinny, the 7th one, Maggie Sanders, her relationship to Kohberger also remains unclear, but she was initially scheduled to appear with the other witnesses at this June 30th hearing, but hers has been delayed to July 7th. Now, Vinny, of course, each of these witnesses will have a chance at these hearings to explain why they should not be compelled to testify in this, for them, out-of-state trial.
All right, Cody, we'll check back in with you in just a bit. Still with us to help us through all this, Chris McDonough and Stuart Fillmore, a corrections officer, boxing gym owner, academic advisor, technical institute, may have been a classmate. The guy owns the auto shop and a professor. What are you hearing, Stuart? What do you think some of these out-of-state witnesses could provide for the prosecution and in terms of evidence?
Yeah, Vinny, like we mentioned in the previous segment, one of the things that we don't have in this case really is motive. I mean, there's a lot of speculation about it. We have the probable cause affidavit that gives us a lot of forensic details, but very little about Bryan Kohberger himself and why, if he did this, why did he do it? So I think what these Pennsylvania witnesses are is to help paint a picture, and let's see some patterns in his past. And some things. No doubt, I think they probably have some folks that have developed a profile of him, and I think that's what these witnesses will support.
Chris McDonough, what are your thoughts? Corrections officer, boxing gym owner, academic advisor, classmate from the Technical Institute, auto shop, and another professor. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, homicide 101. You do want to create that pattern of life evidence. Remember that there's 2 sides of this coin here. You not only want to do what they call a victimology, you want to do a suspectology, and that's what's going on here. They went out, they talked to all of these folks to try to understand, if you want to understand the hunter, you have to know where he used to hunt. And so you've got to get those pattern of life pieces put together.
It's fascinating, a boxing gym owner. I wonder if he was training. I mean, could that be part of this, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to, what's his thought process, right? I mean, he wanted to be a cop. Was he training, as this would be some type of self-defense, class or something to that effect. And then, of course, you've got the opposite side of that. Remember, he had a narcotics problem. Maybe some of these witnesses are going to present information that would give you a better understanding of that situation if in fact, he's our guy.
Stuart, the auto shop guy, do you think that could just be about his car or something further?
Vinny, all we can do is speculate. I mean, again, I think these are folks that that the authorities have talked to that clearly have something relevant to this that I think is going to add to this this profile, this suspectology, as Chris said, that will give us that further picture and hopefully, answer that question maybe, why did he do this? And it can come from anywhere. So who knows exactly, why the mechanic would, be relevant in this, but, you have to be thorough, and that's what this is, that's what I'm seeing in it.
Stuart, let me ask you, when this was a manhunt, we didn't know who would be arrested or who the suspect was. Then we found out who he is, and we found out a little bit more about him. Were you surprised that it was somebody like this? Is this what you were expecting?
I guess I'm kind of blank on what I might have been expecting in this case. My first impression when I heard about the case and really looked at the details of it was, is this a situation, where he didn't really have any connection that we know of yet with the victims, in his background wanting to be a cop and studying criminal justice? Is this like a Leopold and Loeb thing from the 20s in Chicago where these two rich guys thought they could commit the perfect crime and could get away with it? That was my first thought on this, that is a possible motivation here. But, I could be wrong, probably wrong on that, but that was my first impression.
Chris, were you surprised by who ended up getting arrested here? The type of guy that he is?
I wasn't surprised in totality because I had a colleague, Dr. Gary Boccato. We talked about this for hours, and he nailed the personality type that would present itself, and Bryan Kohberger fit. So, no, to answer your question, Vinnie.
All right, big thanks, Stuart Fillmore, Chris McDonough. This is going to be a long trial. We're going to be calling you to come on again and again and again. So we're going to put you on speed dial. Thank you so much. Up next, where did the suspect allegedly go after the murders?
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students and the man accused of this horrific act, who will be on trial this August here on Court TV. Here's the story. The investigation into the University of Idaho murders unfolded like a grim thriller marked by silence, shadows, and relentless pursuit. In the early hours of November 13th, 2022, 4 students, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, were slaughtered in their home as they slept. The killer vanished without a trace. The scene was chilling. No forced entry, untouched cash and electronics, and a bloody trail with no clear motive. Detectives worked around the clock, their leads thin, the pressure mounting. Fear gripped the campus and community as weeks passed without an arrest. Then came a breakthrough, a knife sheath left behind, DNA recovered, and surveillance footage showing a white Hyundai Elantra circling the neighborhood. The focus turned to a criminology PhD student with a chilling fascination with the criminal mind. After a cross-country manhunt, he was arrested in Pennsylvania. The case cracked open, but the mystery of motive and the haunting echoes of that night remain unsolved. This is a case involving digital evidence. It's a case involving forensic evidence, DNA, and together putting these pieces into some form of a timeline of what happened that night. Take a listen to this. At 4 a.m., a DoorDash driver drops off food that Xana Kernodle ordered. At 4:04 a.m., the suspect drives up the street toward the house again. Dylan told investigators it was around that time when something woke her up. It sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog upstairs. Xana's phone records show she is awake and on TikTok at 4:12 a.m. A surveillance camera picks up audio of a thud, voices, and a dog barking at 4:17 a.m. Dylan hears one of the girls say, "There's someone here." She also hears crying and a man say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Sometime between 4 o'clock and 4:20 a.m., she opens her door a few times, and at one point sees a man with bushy eyebrows walking past her room and towards the back sliding door. At 4:20 a.m., the car is seen on surveillance video again, this time leaving at a high rate of speed.
Leaving at a high rate of speed. The suspect getting into that white Elantra and taking off. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Where did the suspect allegedly go after the murders? Important question. Let's check in with Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, who is back with us. And Cody, I know you were out there, spent a lot of time out there, and retraced the alleged route here.
Absolutely, Vinny. And while I was out there, I was following along with that probable cause affidavit that outlined some of the locations that the prosecution says that Kohberger went to after the alleged murders took place. Now, of course, you know, it's only a 15 to 20-minute drive tops from Moscow to Pullman. But when I was out there following those locations, Kohberger was a little bit out of the way of his apartment in Pullman. Take a look at this. Now, according to police in that probable cause affidavit, they believe that Bryan Kohberger exited the King Road neighborhood here at the intersection of Conestoga Street and Palouse River Drive. As you can see, a very wide open, very bare street. Now, remember, during the window of the murders, Bryan Kohberger's phone did not ping on any local cell towers. You know, some police believe that he could have had it turned off. It could have been on airplane mode, but it was not pinging on any towers nonetheless. But around 4:48 a.m., it pinged going down this road, Highway 95, going towards Blaine, Idaho. Now, this is south of Moscow and about 32 to 35 minutes away from his apartment in Pullman, and also going in the opposite direction. Now, as we continue down Highway 95 south, the probable cause affidavit says he goes through Blaine, Idaho, and then continues into Genesee, Idaho. That's where his phone was consistent with pinging off of the local towers. And you can see that this is wide open road, plenty of field on both sides of the road, and also to note, no cameras, no street lights, no nothing to pick anything up out here as far as cars going down the road, but I do see a couple cell towers on top of some of these hills as we continue to go. According to the probable cause affidavit, after passing through Genesee, Idaho, he then headed west towards Uniontown, Washington, before heading back up north to Pullman. And Uniontown is where we are arriving right now. And as you can see, still very barren out here. No surveillance cameras, but remember, this part of the investigation was not relying on the surveillance per se just yet, but more so on his cell phone pings out in this area. And keep in mind, we are still over a half hour away of what should have been just a 15 to 20-minute drive from Moscow back to his apartment in Pullman. We have now, after making that long loop of a drive, we've arrived back to Pullman, Washington, on the Washington State University campus. We are now on Stadium Way. This is one of the main strips on campus. It's also one of the main roads mentioned in that probable cause affidavit. It's one of the roads where they say at many intersections, cameras picked up Kohberger's white Elantra as he arrived back here after 5 a.m., somewhere around 5:25, 5:27 a.m. As you can see, it's very busy around here with students walking around on the sidewalks. And we're coming up on one of these intersections here now. So let's see if we see any cameras. And I see 1, 2, 3, I count 4 cameras at this one intersection on each of these traffic posts. Now there's another intersection right here. There's one camera right up ahead. You can see it standing vertically off of that post, and the one to the left also has a camera on it. So no doubt that some of these cameras, if not all, caught Kohberger in that white Elantra after 5 a.m. coming back from Moscow, Idaho. And here we are now, finally arriving back to those Steptoe Village University housing apartments where Bryan Kohberger, the alleged suspect in the Idaho student murders, this is where he lived at the time in November of 2022. Vinny, you saw it right there. What was supposed to be a 15 to 20-minute drive tops, I remember, turned into about a 50-minute to an hour drive. And of course, you know, again, all of this is based on his cell phone pings and surveillance of his white Elantra that were outlined in that probable cause affidavit.
All right, Cody Thomas, great work as always. Thanks so much. Let's dig a little deeper here to help us answer our question. YouTube, true crime YouTuber Gray Hughes from Gray Hughes Investigates has been all over this case, and Howard Blum, author of When the Night Comes Falling, a Requiem for the Idaho Student Murders. It's a must-read as you get ready for watching this trial. Thank you both for being here. Gray, I know in your Gray Hughes Investigates, you've created a map of this. I want to put the map up for the folks, and why don't you explain the significance of the map and your thoughts about this alleged post-murder trip?
Well, after the homicides, he leaves the house, I think probably like at 4:18, and then there's some time he spends at his car before he drives away. So from 4:20 and 47 seconds, that's when he sped away to high rate of speed. And if you drove down Highway 95, I actually drove it, I mapped it all out, I have a video of it, where I drove down Highway 95, and you should be at Blaine at around 4:32, okay? But it didn't ping there until 4:48. So we're missing, there is 16 minutes of unaccounted for time. Now, what I think is possible that Kohberger did, if you look at that map right there at the top, that's Palouse River Drive, that long straightaway. And if he kept going that direction and around in this really rural area here, he comes through Blaine and then out to Highway 95 in 29 minutes. So that would be around 4:49, but he was driving a little bit quicker, so 4:48, he turns his phone on, and then he heads down south on Highway 95. And in some of these court hearings, we've seen Ann Taylor saying that there's no surveillance footage of the Elantra on various stores on Highway 95 where it should have shown up on. So I think he skipped around and went around this whole, a route way out there. Maybe he put the knife out in that area somewhere, but he came back to Highway 95, and then he heads south a little bit, and then he cuts across. He doesn't actually, if you look at the probable cause document, he doesn't go to those major towns that are mentioned. He cuts across in this incredibly rural area and then makes his way to Highway 195 and then back up north again. And I actually drove that crazy route across where you're just in the middle of absolute nowhere. And I got exactly to the place in Johnson, Washington, right where it was supposed to ping at exactly the right amount of time.
Wow.
I mean, it's amazing. It's,
wow.
You know.
Howard, what are your thoughts about this post-murder drive allegedly taken by the suspect here?
Well, he's clearly taking a circumlocucious route. He's not going in a direct direction. He's taking his time. He's also pauses to turn on his phone, and I think that's interesting. We now know where he is. For 2 hours, from 2:47 to 4:48, the phone is off. That was the time, during that time the murders occurred. That was the time when he was saying he was out at a wilderness park, that it was his alibi. But the judge said that was not an alibi. It wasn't enough evidence. So during this time, something else is happening. And I think the trial is going to center on this. I think this is going to be really significant. Did he meet with anyone else? Did he leave the weapon there? Did he leave clothes there? All this is going to come up, and it's going to be one of the key mysteries of the trial. And if the prosecution cannot nail this down, it's going to put large doubts on their case.
Absolutely. You know, the way this trial is going to play, again, we are going to learn so much each day of testimony. So much more is going to be revealed. Our guests are staying with us. Still to come. Did the suspect think he was going to be arrested for murder?
Do you understand the charge in count 3, murder in the first degree?
Yes.
Do you understand the maximum penalty?
Yes.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
The maximum penalty for this offense, if you were to plead guilty or be found guilty, is death or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes. Do you understand the charge in count 3, murder in the first degree?
Yes.
Do you understand the maximum penalty?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. This is a death penalty case. Everything is at stake. And at that point, obviously, he knows he's been arrested, he's been charged, and he's going to have a trial where prosecutors will be seeking death. He doesn't get arrested till December 30th. Before he gets arrested, on December 15th, he is stopped by police when he's driving across the country from Pullman, Washington, back to Pennsylvania with his father. So could you imagine? The murders are November 13th. So if you believe prosecutors that this is the man who did it, imagine committing quadruple murder and then getting pulled over by police while you're driving across the country. We've got the body cam. Let's take a look.
Hello. How you doing? How y'all doing today? See, he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van. Pulled you over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay. Cool. Where are you headed?
We're going to actually inside of it. Well, we're coming from WSU, and we're scanning.
What's WSU?
That is SWAT team and everything.
So we're, okay, I'm having a hard time hearing you because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University? Yeah. And you're going where? Oh.
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Bizarre and awkward, right? That's what I'm seeing from this defendant. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. At this point, when he's pulled over by police, December 15th, did the suspect think he was going to be arrested for murder? What's going on in his mind? Still with us, helping us with our investigation, Gray Hughes and Howard Blum. Howard, what are your thoughts about this moment? It's you know, knowing what we know of the allegations at this point, this is like a month after the murders. And he's pulled over. Do you think he's thinking this is it?
I've done some reporting on this, and from the people I've talked to, not members of the family, but people who have spoken with the family, at this point, Michael Kohberger, the father, is beginning to suspect, is this possible? Could my son possibly be this monster? That's why you see him talking about the shooting at Washington State University that's not connected. This is how his mind is working. Bryan, at this point, is obsessed about getting back to school and reclaiming his job. During this trip, he tells his father that he's gotten in trouble at school, but there are rules and regulations and he's going to fight for it. So Bryan is living in two different worlds simultaneously. One of denial and one of also trying to hide the facts that could implicate him. Even after his arrest, he's in the police car. He has handcuffs on, and he's talking to the officer in the car, and he's saying, you know, I'm a criminology student. We should get together for coffee sometime. It's this total disassociation for what really is happening. So on one level, he knows what's happening. On another level, he thinks he's smart enough somehow, I believe, that he's going to escape from it.
Unreal. Gray, what did you think of this traffic stop?
I thought if he got pulled over once, he might just be, thought, okay, I got pulled over. But a second time, man, he must have been absolutely paranoid now that they are onto him. And I think that's what maybe led to him realizing that they might have his DNA. Now, I have a theory that the knife sheath was left intentionally as a calling card, and that's why there's so little DNA on it. Like, I mean, I don't know if there's other blood mixtures or whatever, but it sounds like there was almost no DNA on it, except there was one single source of DNA on the underside of the button snap, which means maybe he tried cleaning it really well, but he missed that little spot underneath the button snap, and he left it there at the crime scene as a calling card. You know, the K-Bar killer, maybe he wanted to be called. But then when he got pulled over twice, he realized he screwed up. He probably thought that, and that's why when they arrested him, he was in the kitchen wearing surgical gloves, separating his trash and putting it into the neighbor's garbage can, his own trash. So I think he absolutely was paranoid out of his mind after being pulled over twice. He might have thought he'd gotten away with it, and perhaps he was even purchasing that other K-bar knife sheath that we see mentioned in the documents, or I don't know if it was in the document. Yeah, it was in the documents, to maybe commit another homicide and leave another K-bar knife sheath somewhere. Or he had it to, if law enforcement showed up, he'd say, oh, here it is, I've got my knife sheath right here.
Yeah, without that DNA,
that's my theory.
Yeah, without the DNA, this is a tough case. Howard, what are your thoughts about this suspect if he hadn't been arrested?
Well, I think he believed, actually, that he was going to get away with it. And there's really just moments before the arrest when it all becomes clear to him. It's described in one of the affidavits. There's a helicopter circling overhead, and he can hear the helicopter. He moves from one room to the garage, and we can see lights go on in the car. They have a sniper on him, and the sniper is looking through the sights, and they see him move from the garage back to the kitchen, and maybe he's taken something out of the car, and it's all suddenly closing in on him. And then suddenly he gets arrested. He's put in handcuffs. His parents are tied with zip locks, snaps, and he's asking, have you arrested anyone else? And the question is, was he talking about accomplices, or did he think his parents were even arrested?
Wow.
So at this point,
the way you described that scene, it was almost like the end of Goodfellas with Ray Liotta when the choppers and everyone's after him. That's the feeling I got here.
A sense of recognition of it all coming down on him suddenly, just like in Goodfellas.
Yeah. Gray, what are your expectations for the way he will behave during this trial?
Well, I mean, if it's anything like what he's doing now, he'll just basically stare. I mean, he doesn't do anything. He doesn't make any faces. He just sits and stares. I know that he'll definitely make sure that his eyebrows are nice and trimmed up. As we can see, they don't look anywhere near what they used to look like in the image that was taken at 10:30 in the morning when he did the little thumbs up picture. He had incredibly bushy eyebrows, but once that was part of the affidavit that he read, the probable cause affidavit, you can see that he trimmed his eyebrows. So I think he'll just do what he's doing now. I mean, he just literally sits there and he doesn't make any faces.
Unbelievable. Gray Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Thank you so much, Howard Blum. A requiem for the Idaho student murders. Thank you so much. Many of the trials we cover on Court TV involve murders of people known by the defendants, sometimes a spouse, sometimes a family member. Those cases are driven by motive and how it's connected to the relationships between those involved. But this case is something completely different. And as more information is revealed, it's just leading to more questions about why this happened. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.
There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.